Good morning, everyone. Welcome back, and we're now going into a new unit. Anyone wants to guess? Okay, the pine forest. We'll be doing the pine forest. So now we will leave the sea, and we're now on land. Okay, we're out of the boat, and we're on the bus, and we're going to a pine forest. Where is that located? The Pine Ridge, Mountain Pine Ridge. All right, let's go there then. Now, we must study pine forests. Pine forest is very important to global warming, to our climate, and so now we are going to be learning about the pine forest together. Pine forests and people are connected and have been since ancient times. We have always had a special relationship based on survival. It was a delicate chain of existence when we once treated with respect and appreciation, but people began to upset this balance. They saw the forest not as a part of them, but as something to be conquered. They used the seemingly limitless forests, cutting down millions of trees. But now it has come to attention that the forests do have limits, and it's time to bring back into balance. Now, it says that we had a special connection. We, people before us, who are some people that you can think about that had this very special connection with the forest? Kyle?
Mayans.
The Maya, yes. Most definitely the Maya people, they had a special connection. It says that they treated the forest with respect and appreciation. In what ways have we learned about the respect and the appreciation that they showed for the forest? How do you think we know that our ancestors, they had this respect and appreciation? How did they show this respect, and how did they show their appreciation for the forests around them? Anyone? Edwin?
They had a forest god.
A forest god. Okay, so first of all, the appreciation goes as far as worshiping and the admiration and respect that they gave through their gods that they believed. Appreciation. Why do you think there was so much appreciation for the forest? And how did they show this?
By not cutting down the trees.
Not cutting down. Okay, maybe they did not cut down as much as we practice now. Seemingly limitless forests. What do we understand that it seems that though people thought that the forest was limitless? What do we understand by that word limitless? Let's hear from Edwin.
When they cut down the trees, they continued, and they didn't see a stop to it. So I think
Very
they
good.
thought it would never finish.
Yes, they cut and they cut. They continued. That's the word I like that Edwin used. They continued to cut. They didn't see the need to stop. They didn't see the need to stop and think about what they were doing and the practices that they had. Now, our attention has been drawn to our forests and new practices that we must put in place to preserve what we have. Let's talk a little about our beliefs and the history of our pine forests. It says the history of the Mountain Pine Ridge. Did you know that the Mountain Pine Ridge was first established where it was called a reserve in the year 1944? So even though the Mayas were there, even though the Baymen came and they were cutting all over our country, it wasn't until 1944 that our Mountain Pine Ridge was actually claimed. It was claimed as a nature reserve We all know where our mountain pine ridge is, isn't that so? Where is it? The Cayo district. Yes, it was in 1944 that it was established to protect and manage the nature pine forests. It says that we have about 106,352.5 acres of that reserve. That's about 430 square kilometers. Taking it all squared around, it's about 430 square kilometers. And this reserve is predominantly, meaning mainly, firstly, it is pine trees called the Honduras pine. It's about 58.5% of the entire rainforest, of the entire forest, it's pine trees. Now, Honduras pine, the name given to the pine trees in Belize. Do you know anything about pine wood? Do you have any experience, have you had any experience of seeing pine wood or see people work with pine wood? Go ahead, Edwin.
It is very flammable and
very flammable. Could you break that down? Very flammable.
Catches fire easily.
Catches fire
because
very
of the,
easily.
The oils in it. Last time I went to Mountain Pine Ridge, I touched one of the trees and it was very pointy. The leaves were pointy, more like prickles more than leaves.
Right. That's what I guess. That's why it has its name,
and
pine.
And it's very dry.
Very dry. He says that it's flammable. If you are a Boy Scout or a Girl Guide camping, and you're going to light a fire, the first thing your instructor will tell you to look for pine. Look for pine wood because that will catch quite easily. Quite easily. It's going to catch easier than any other wood. But one of the things to know that is very hard. If you see a builder trying to nail pine board, it has a reddish color, an orange reddish color. And if you see that builder trying to nail pine board, sometimes the nails are actually bent. They're hard. I've seen where they would take the nail. I guess now they have very special nails for the pine board, but they would actually grease that nail to send it through that board with the hammer. It's a very hard wood, and that's the reason why it's used a whole lot, but it will go up in flames quite easier than the other woods. Okay? And we have in our forest what is primarily called the Honduras pine. It says a little is known of the early history of this area. However, the Maya artifacts discovered in Barton Creek, which is an area, a cave in the Mountain Pine Ridge area, suggest that it was used as a ritual site by the Mayas. So Edwin was quite correct when he mentioned the gods, the forest gods, okay? It was actually a special sacred place for the Mayan, right? I see some people smiling. I guess that's the Mayan connection. Is that so? Okay, or some experience that they have. It is believed that the first forester visited this area in 1897. This area was designated as Forest Reserve in 1944. And by 1945, it was established. They established fire control in this area, meaning that they set up rules that people had to be careful when they were in this area not to light matches or any other thing that was flammable. But in 1949, almost all of this pine ridge was burnt down. There was also a very recent fire in the Mountain Pine Ridge. Can anyone tell me what year that took place? The last big forest fire we had in Belize? Okay, it was as recent as last year, 2011, in the month of May. There was actually a resort called the Bristlecone Lodge. That resort had to be evacuated. May 2011, we had a massive fire in the Mountain Pine Ridge. Okay. Hunting was banned in the reserve in 1978 in recognition of the nature reservation role that could be played by the reserve. So laws are in place. No hunting should be done in this area, and we have to be careful when we're in the area not to start a fire. Let's take a look now at what our mountain pine ridge looks like. We will notice that this is the rainforest, but you will notice here that there's a whole lot of pine trees within the forest. This is about 58.5% are pine trees. We take a little deeper look. Here are some tall pine trees, a part of our pine forest. There's a poem that you have, a pretty paper that matches your shirt. I'd like you to take a minute and look over the poem. It's a long poem. It's a beautiful poem, and it was written by a lady named Zelia Johnson. Zelia is actually a teacher who lives in Belize, right? So take a moment to read, and then we'll share the poem. The title is The Pine Forest Cry. Okay? I'll begin the poem, and then I'll stop, and then I would like one volunteer, I won't say who, to continue reading until we get to the second verse, and then that person stops, and then someone else will read. Let's read loud and clear. Let's read to appreciate Miss Zelia's poem. The Pine Forest Cry. Under the moonlight, the leaves would shimmer, glitter, and shine. We used to stand so proud, claiming this land to be yours and mine. How sad to see it wasting away, being shred apart day by day.
In come the beetles who start eating their way until they got hold of our forest one day. Leaf by leaf, bit by bit they fall, our green giants no longer stand tall. Soon they'll no longer be there, and it's all because we don't care, polluting our land, sea, and air, creating that great hole in our atmosphere.
The sun up high, even hotter than before, burning up everything down here on the floor, tearing our planet apart, creating rifts in our waters and pain in our hearts. To know we are losing our beauty and our charm, never knew we were causing such harm.
They cry out loud, but we never hear them. Words, even seeing the leaves falling off their stems, their tears fall onto the ground, and their battle skulls all surround. But still, we never notice our treasures because we continue hunting and farming with pleasure. As they silently wither away, sadly, we are not the only ones who will pay.
It is incredible how we take our forests for a wrestle, since the beetles seem to have come home to nestle. Can we all do the last part together? All innocent animals are losing their habitats. Beautiful creatures, even our big cats, all gone. It is the only place they called home, the only home they have. Nothing left but the sky so blue. We better heed their warnings too. This time is now. Let us not wait. We must start to cherish the forest we treated with hate. What is the topic of this poem?
The Pine Forest Cry.
The Pine Forest Cry. What is the message that Zila gives to us? What's the main message of this poem? Go ahead, Erwin.
It's saying we must start to take care of the pine forest, because before we just treated it with hate and didn't care, but now the effects are starting to show.
Very well said. We must treat it with more care. We have shown that we hated, or we treated it like we hated it. But now, Erwin says the effects are here, And so we need to do better. Very well said. Who stood proud and claimed the land? Go ahead.
We, the people.
The people. We all claim the land. How is the forest shred day by day according to Miss Johnson? Edwin?
Loggers has it. People have it as a job to cut down trees. Like
Yes,
they
loggers.
sell loggers. So
Cutting down trees.
every day they go to their job, cutting down more trees and destroying our forests.
Yes, very good. And Miss Johnson introduces us to another way that now our pine forests are being shredded. Go ahead, Stephen.
The beetles.
The beetles. Miss Jella Johnson introduces us to a new threat to the pine forest that later this morning you will be hearing a whole lot more of about the beetles. So while we have people shredding, we now can identify a new threat to the pine forest, and we will definitely be learning more about the beetles. What are some of the damages caused by the destruction of trees? What are some of the damages that you can think about and is related in the poem that is caused by the destruction of trees? Release?
Innocent animals losing their habitats.
Innocent animals losing their habitat. Very good. Daisy, can you give us another destruction? So we have the destruction of habitats. What else would the destruction of trees cause beside the animals losing their habitat in the forest? Think out of the forest, because it does have other effects. Go ahead, Edwin.
Less oxygen is being produced.
Less oxygen is being produced. Quite right. Is there one more that we can share?
Sun is getting hotter than before.
The sun is getting hotter. Why? Why, Evelyn?
Because of pollution, air pollution.
Because
more
of air
carbon dioxide
pollution.
is produced.
Yes. All of that is caused because of the damage of the trees. Thank you. How does the author describe our attitude towards the forests? What does the author says about our attitude? Erwin?
The poet is saying that all we're showing is hatred towards the forest.
Yes, she says that we show hatred. Is there any other way that she expresses her attitude towards the forest, Edwin?
She's describing to us that we are being careless about our forests.
We're careless. Yes, she describes us as being careless. Name some animals losing habitats. Kyle?
Our big cats.
Or big cats. Any other you can think about?
Guessing from the forest that it has a lot of trees, birds.
The birds. Very good. True. Any other? Big cats, birds. Any other? Kyle?
Monkeys.
Monkeys. Right? What is the warning given to us by the poet? In a simple way, she's telling us that if we don't continue, could you complete that sentence for me? That if we don't continue,
We are not the only ones that will pay in the end.
thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Rainforests in Belize, Central America, and around the world. Let's hear a little about our rainforests. The tropical rainforest is a forest of tall trees in the region of year-round warmth. An average of 50 to 260 inches of rainfall yearly. Rainforests belong to the tropical wet climate group, and that's why they grow so well in Belize. The temperature in a rainforest rarely gets higher than 93 degrees Fahrenheit. Earlier, one of your colleagues said that the forests help us with the warming, that the destruction of trees will cause more warmth. Here it's saying that it actually helps us to manage, because it helps with the heat not rising too high. That's what our trees are doing for us. Or drops below 68 degrees Fahrenheit. There's an average humidity, which is about 77 and 88 degrees. Rainfall is often more than 100 inches a year, so there's lots of rainfall, which we need. There is usually a brief season of less rain also, and almost all rainforests lie near the equator. Rainforests now cover less than 6% of Earth's land surface. Because of the destruction, we are losing rainforests all over the world. Scientists estimate that more than half of all the world's plant and animal species live in tropical rainforests. The rainforest is much needed for the animal habitat. Tropical rainforests produce about 40% of the Earth's oxygen. Isn't that amazing? And what's so important about the pine forests? All living things, marbled murrelets, those are some beautiful birds, the tailed frog, the fungi, they all depend on the forests. There are as many as 1,500 invertebrates living on and in one ancient forest tree. So one forest tree, you can have so many living things depending on that tree. Some of these species may hold the key to unlocking scientific mysteries. When scientists want to study animals and invertebrates, one of the places that they will visit will definitely be the rainforest, and they will be looking keenly at the pine forests. Each plant and animal is unique, and many of these animals depend entirely on the forests. And now they're losing their habitats because of destruction. Pine forests help to protect our waters and manage our climate. Very important. When it rains in the forest, the leaves allow the water to slowly drip to the ground. Can you imagine that we take that for granted? How many of you ever tried to shelter under a tree when it was raining? Have you ever tried that? I remember some years ago, when I used to attend the Belize Teachers College. When we came out of the yard, there was this big tree right on Princess Margaret Drive, and so many days we had to spend under that tree trying not to get wet. The beautiful thing about it that the rain didn't come straight on you. Because of the leaves, you were somewhat protected. You didn't get wet right through very quickly. Here it says that the trees actually protect us, protect our land when it rains. Instead of having all that splash and all that heavy rain coming down, the leaves of the trees allow the rain to trickle down on the ground, having a lesser effect on erosion and those sorts of things. When a forest has been clear cut, when the trees have been cut off a land, the rain will pour down hard. That soil is not protected. The dirt will then wash down into the streams. It will then muddy the waters. That muddy water will reach the sea. This doesn't do well for our coral reef and our fish. Actually, this is unhealthy for fish and the coral reef. And of course, we have flooding. Without trees, the moisture in the air evaporates quickly. This process prevents trees from receiving the water they need. So, are the trees important? Very important. Erosion. Without trees, water washes away the soil of the forest during and after a rain. And we see a lot of that on the television. Sometimes we hear about mudslides in storms, tropical storms and hurricanes. Many times people survive the hurricane, but the after effect of mudslides due to the cutting down of trees and the cutting down of forests sometimes cause more damage than the wind and the rain that came. Without the help of the pine forests, we would have much less oxygen. We know that it's from the trees that we are able to breathe in that oxygen. Do you know 1 acre of the forest provides over 6 tons of oxygen each year? Therefore, we must protect our Belize pine forest. Let's take a look at this beautiful picture, our atmosphere. What do we see up there? The clouds. Go ahead, sir. Unlike clouds, though, greenhouse gases are invisible and build up in the atmosphere. Pine forests help to reduce carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Kindly explain. Who would like to explain now that statement there? Go ahead.
Trees use carbon dioxide in order to produce their food during photosynthesis. So
Okay.
they use carbon dioxide in the air. Reducing less carbon dioxide means reducing less greenhouse gases, which in turn it kind of helps the atmosphere so it doesn't warm up easier.
Okay. So the pine forest helps to reduce the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Thank you for explaining, Edwin. Pine trees are important to humans and animals alike. How are they important to us again? Anybody? Yadira? Let's do a little review here.
They provide us with oxygen.
Provides us with oxygen. That's one of the most important reasons. Pine trees are evergreen, cone-bearing plants native to the most of North America. And they belong to a special family, the genus Pinus family, the Pinaceae and phylum Coniferophyta. Pine trees are related to firs, spruces, hemlocks, cypresses, and redwoods. Those are all different types of pine trees in different pine forests. For centuries, they have held economic, aesthetic, and ecological importance. Not only do pine trees provide important products, they beautify our homes and wilderness spaces. So even the pine forest is a beautiful thing to see. Some tourists come to Belize just to visit and see what a rainforest looks like. There are many important reasons why we must preserve our pine forests. Economic importance. Take one guess. What do you think is meant by economic importance? Take a guess before we go through the notes. What is meant by economic importance? Erwin?
Well, economic means money and
Means money.
money.
Yes.
So I'm guessing it means like it is important to Belize's
Economy.
and
Money for Belize.
Yep.
Isn't that so?
With the tourism.
Thank you. There are about 100 species of pine trees and all are woody plants. They are important economically primarily because their wood is used for timber. The wood is used to build things. The timber is used in construction, for houses, for furniture, for paneling, and for flooring. So to do the siding and to do the edges and to build the house and the walls, all those things, the pine wood is used for. Pines also are used for the manufacture of substances such as turpentine, resin, pulp, and paper. The pulp is actually the material, a crushed material, that is a crushed material used from the pine that is used to make paper. The resin is a type of chemical that is used, that comes like an oil that comes from the pine wood that is used in things like perfumes. using varnish and the turpentine. How many of you have heard that word turpentine? Turpentine is another liquid. It's used in paints. It's used for different reasons in your house. Some of it is found in things that we use. It's added to cleaning agents and things like that. A lot of things are being used in our houses and around us that comes from the pine trees. Paper is a special one. Here is an old picture showing logging, the cutting down of pine trees in the Belize forests. Okay? Here is a very nice picture showing what that type of logging can be used for. Notice here, these are actually furniture. Aren't they pretty? All pine wood. Okay? Now there are also scientific importance to pine trees. One type of pine tree, the bristlecone pine, or the Pinus aristata, has an extremely long lifespan, making it useful for scientific study. Let's go to the bristlecone pine. Next picture, please. That's a picture of the bristlecone pine. Before we go through the rest of the notes, why do you think it's used for scientific reasons? Why is it important to the scientists? Go ahead.
Since the trees live for long, it means they go through a lot of weather and climate and different disasters, so maybe they can get some research from the bark of the tree or to see what strengthens the tree and see how they can generate other plants.
Thank you. That's very good critical thinking, Edwin. Look at the bottom of the tree, the root. What did Edwin say about it? It would be an old tree. Is that so? What tells you that that's an old tree? Looking at it, what would make you feel make you believe it's an old tree?
It looks as if the soil eroded away quicker than the tree. Eroded away quicker than the tree.
Do you see how much that the bottom of that tree is spread out? That tells you one of the reasons we're not seeing the root itself under the ground, but just the trunk of that tree tells us that it has had to be there for many, many years. Let's go back, okay? Its tree rings provide clues to scientists regarding the climate of bygone eras. So a scientist would take a tree and look at the rings around the trunk and down by the root. And that will tell us when they cut that tree and they look at that trunk and they see all the rings, it tells them how old that tree is. That is what is done with our mahogany trees. That's how the loggers tell how old that tree is. The pine grows in the mountainous regions of California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. So these are not trees in Belize. It grows slowly and can live for several thousands of years. Imagine, let's go back to the bristlecone. This tree can live for thousands of years. So it will outlive us, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, your children, and it's there for the scientists to study. Tell them, as Edwin said, about the climate and all the weathering and all the different things that this tree may have had to go through during its lifespan. Okay? Pine trees are important, ecological importance. They're important for the environment also. Pine trees provide forestation in areas where deciduous trees cannot grow due to extreme elevation and latitude. So it says that those trees, those perennials that can't grow in high places, because deciduous trees are those trees that fall their leaves once per year, and that creates a balance for the environment. If you have these trees just shredding their leaves over and over, then the land or the soil will not be so protected. So pine trees does give that kind of protection to the soil. They are those trees that can grow in high elevation, high altitude, and gives protection. Siberian dwarf pine, mountain pine, and bristlecone pines are examples of pines that grow in environments hostile to other types of trees. So where other trees can't grow, the pine tree can grow and offer that protection to us, animals, and the soil. They provide habitat and a food source for wildlife in these areas and purify the air. Food source. Do we eat anything from the pine tree? Do we? Not that we know of. Pine trees provide food for animals and humans. Edwin says, oh, their seeds are eaten by squirrels and birds, which distribute the seeds to new areas. Don't you see the birds and the squirrels sometimes on the pine trees? They love the pine trees. Anywhere there's a pine tree, you can almost be sure you will see a squirrel at some time. Butterflies and moths feed on pine needles. Those are Edwin spoke about the needles before, and he said he got to touch them and they're prickly. Humans use pine nuts for cooking. So the nuts from the pine tree, just like how we have the coconuts that give oil, the pine nuts give oil also. For cooking and baking, sprinkled on salads and as an ingredient in pesto, a pasta sauce. So when you go to the store and you go to buy pasta sauce, look and see if there's pesto written on that label. Comes from the pine tree. Pine nuts have been consumed by humans since ancient Greek and Roman times. So you see how long pine trees have been around, and we need to keep them around us for a very long time. Aesthetic importance for arts and beautification. When we talk about aesthetic, we're thinking about beautifying, very artistic. Pine trees have always had great aesthetic value. Give me an example in Belize, an aesthetic value of the pine tree. How do we value pine trees? A special time of the year, we dress them up. Christmas time, yes, Christmas time. They're used in home landscapes and in parks and other public areas. Wherever you want, whichever place you want to beautify, nothing is better than planting a pine tree there. They're grown commercially as Christmas trees. Even in the mountain pine ridge, some of these trees are taken out, and now we have a lot of artificial Christmas trees. But some years ago, almost everyone who had a Christmas tree in their homes or that was decorated for Christmas, it was a real Christmas tree that came out of a pine forest. Pine boughs are used as decoration in the winter time. So the pine boughs will be the limbs. They're taken off and they're decorated and placed all around. Very beautiful trees and very beautiful decorations they make. Pine cones are used as decorations and also in crafts. Christmas tree decorations. People collect the pine cones and they make beautiful decorations for the Christmas tree. Locally made. They paint them and varnish them, spray them, put on the glitters, and some people can do some very beautiful decorations. Have you ever been involved in making decorations from the pine cone? Okay, it's an art to learn. It's a very beautiful decoration. Something to give as a Christmas gift. Some gardeners use pine needles as mulch in their gardens. So the same pine, the pine needles that drop, they can be used as mulch. They are set around the trees to help the trees to keep away the immediate heat, and it forms like a humus or a compost right there around the tree, protects the tree. All right? So they are very good for mulch also, especially for acid-loving flowers such as roses. So if you have a rose plant and you have a pine tree, you collect the pine needles and you put them right there around the rose plant and use it as mulch for that plant. It will help it to grow. And there is a beautiful Christmas tree. Isn't that lovely? And that's a real pine tree. Okay? And when would we see that? When would we see such a beautiful tree? Christmas time. Right? That's a beautiful pine tree that we must protect and help take good care of them in our pine forests. Okay? Any questions? Edwin says no.